Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. We've got some big stuff to cover today, and in a rare turn of events, it's all good news. Don't get spoiled. And sorry for taking so long on this one. That happens when I need to do research to get the details just right. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park, Shay Meehan, and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/yangdaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. Our favorite insurrectionist sympathizer, Josh Hawley, is again forcing me to give him credit on pushing in the direction of UBI. Hawley is proposing a bill for a new child tax credit of $6,000 for single parents or $12,000 for married parents. It would be fully refundable, meaning it's a rebate, not a tax cut, and recipients can choose either monthly installments or a lump sum at tax time. The amount does not depend on the number of children. Unlike Biden's child allowance, Hawley's has no means-tested income cap. So that's the good news. The bad news is that Hawley's has a means-tested income minimum of $7,500, meaning his cuts out the poor instead of the relatively wealthy. It's also loaded with the traditional wage slavery rhetoric of encouraging families to work. Apparently, the two parties are competing over how to be wrong on means testing, with neither looking at the empirical evidence that means testing is just bad in any form. More bad is that Hawley's allowance cuts off at the age of 13. So the negatives relative to Biden's allowance are the age limit, the lower bounds means testing, and the marriage incentive of single parents getting half as much. The positives are the much larger size of the benefit and the lack of upper bound means testing. One thing I have not seen specified is whether it would be per parent or per family. I assume the latter, which would be unfortunate. Also have not seen any mention of a funding plan, so it's likely not balanced by cuts to other programs as Romney's was. I'm thrilled to see any Republican proposing such a large near UBI benefit, but that minimum means testing is toxic enough to make me reluctant to support it. I don't support the anti-free market idea of tying survival to employment, especially when data shows such work incentives are only harmful. Empirical evidence is clear that people are better able to find and create jobs with unconditional financial security. This whole concept of cutting off benefits from the people who most need them is entirely backwards. That said, this is a move toward monthly cash benefits that I hope encourages other Republican legislators. Let's hope that these competing child allowances don't become the excuse that either party uses to block the other side. While this has a couple of terrible conditions, bear in mind that this is a Republican legislator proposing a $1,000 per month basic income for most married people. I should not have to tell the Yang Gang what a huge deal that is. This is progress which should be encouraged alongside fair criticism of the flaws. We even have good news out of Kentucky on this fine day. 43 professors of economics and related fields from 14 institutions in Kentucky are asking their congressional representatives to support a carbon tax dividend. As they say, this would mitigate climate change through free market economics by incorporating the costs of pollution into products and services, a cost which is currently being effectively subsidized by all of us, as we all ultimately pay the cost of pollution. That cost needs to be visible to consumers when they are making their decisions on what products to use. Returning the revenue to the people via a UBI-like dividend ensures that all but those consuming large amounts of polluting goods will come out ahead. As you know, I'm a huge fan of this. Mitigating climate change, improving the free market, and getting a UBI all in one. Hell yes. Great to see this coming from McConnell's home state. Let your own representatives know where you stand on the carbon fee and dividend. Scott dropped in on the Real Talk with Zuby podcast to talk UBI. Zuby did a poll before the episode on support for UBI, and his audience was heavily against it, which means this was a great place for Scott to drop some knowledge. And finally, I can't recall if we reported on this already, but members of the Salt Lake City Council voted 6-1 in November to institute ranked choice voting in city elections. They will be the largest municipality to use RCV when it goes into use this November. What I'm sure I have not reported on is that they also eliminated primaries. That makes this a much bigger story. As you may recall, my big hangup with Alaska's election reform was that they only implemented RCV in the general, not the primaries, which means people are still not free to vote for who they want within their party. Getting rid of primaries altogether is what I have been wanting to see, as long as it's accompanied by switching to non-plurality voting, of course, so as to eliminate the spoiler effect and other plurality issues. I would prefer score or approval voting to RCV, but this is still awesome. Let's work to spread it to every city and then the nation. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share Hawley's child allowance, the carbon dividend call, and Salt Lake City's election reform. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement Easy Contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.